Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well.
I know.
All right. Give it a second for it to pop up here. Maybe. It's not showing on my side. Oh, there it is finally. There we go. All right. So let's take a look at what's in the Message Center for last month or so. And you know how things kind of tend to slow down a little bit. For some reason, it didn't seem like the Message Center slowed down much at all. But of course, that really means things are coming in the near future. So high level, this is what we're taking a look at new things that are coming down the pipeline and some administrative things that you really need to think about it as well. All right, so we're going to start with SharePoint. There's a couple ones on SharePoint. I'm like, ooh, you know, that SharePoint background that I had, these are the ones that I'm like, ooh, these are kind of nice. I want to make sure I'm kind of talking about these a little bit. So one of them is, if you guys are familiar with the Hero Web part, they're actually reimagining this and actually making an update to the Hero Web part as well. This is starting here for targeted tenants. Right, so those who have signed up to be a targeted tenant are tenants. That's happening here in January, and then worldwide it's coming in here in February, so mid-February to late February. Basically, you can add these, this carousel slide piece to the Hero Web part, right? We've had the carousel before, but it's going to get a nice update. And the nice thing about it is I do like the fact that you can actually add stream videos to this carousel now, which is going to augment that Hero Web part just a little bit more. Big one, let your site owners know that this is happening so that they can incorporate that as it comes out into their tenants. All right, another one, and this one is a brand new web part. Part of SharePoint is the ability, especially with the news and events, it's automatic, right? It automatically pulling in that information. It's getting you that updated information. But what happens if I want to have something that it looks really nice and it's more static, right? So that's what the editorial card web part is. And ultimately, this is coming out here targeted late January to February. And then the rest of us are going to get this in mid-February to mid to late February. And it's really the ability to be able to have a static card that has that information in it, but you can customize the background. You can put your own custom images in there. You can put the content in there, obviously a link, right? But this gives you a little bit more customization capability with this. So again, just like the other web part, with that update, let your site owners know that this is coming. And to Pete's point, maybe we do talk about SharePoint UX design session for an upcoming meeting, because I think there's a lot of changes that have happened recently, and I think a lot of organizations could use something like that to really augment their look and feel of their SharePoint sites. All right, completely different. We're going to switch to Excel, and this is actually Excel on the web. If you're not familiar, Excel Desktop got the ability to do Python and Excel. And most of us are going to say like, yeah, okay, but I got some data engineers out there that have been wanting Python in Excel for quite a while, and you've had to be able to do that as an add-on. And there was a lot of security, wrapped around that. With this being able to be in Excel directly as not an add-on, I think this is a very important. And by the way, from a web perspective, especially if I don't have necessarily a desktop app to be able to do things, this is very important. So this change is happening here, started already, or will be starting here in January and going into late March. But basically, the ability to do this in web versus having to have the desktop version in there. By the way, behind the scenes, and this is the important thing, Python is one of those scenarios where you could actually have malicious code. And part of that, to get around that from a security perspective, Microsoft, is actually sitting there and having a secure container behind the scenes to make sure that it doesn't get out of control, right? And you have issues with that. So that's happening in the cloud behind the scenes when you're using Python and Excel. Additionally, that message talked about if you have the Copilot license, then you get the ability to do Copilot in Excel with Python. So basically being able to ask Copilot to be able to create some specific data analysis. And if the outcome isn't for needed to be in Python, it'll actually be able to do that and give you that Python code. Then you can add it into the Excel spreadsheet to be able to then run and show you what's going on from there. So keep this in mind. Another one, make sure you're notifying your end users that these changes are happening. I don't know about you, but I utilize forms a lot. So I do a lot of different sessions here. My day job, I do, we've run summits before, we do monthly sessions. We do that here with this user group. We use forms for a lot of that information, right? So being able to get that information and then export that out and get going on that is important. So we know what's going on over the, for whatever we're trying to do. And this is the same thing you would want to do with your surveys that you have out there. Well, now, instead of having to do everything in web, we're going to be able to have that sync directly down into our desktop version. As you see in the screenshots here, it'll actually give you the ability to do it in desktop. Oh, and additionally, you're going to be able to create a form directly from Excel, right? So you'll see this is going to end up being an update into the desktop version of Excel so that you can then insert a form. It'll go create that form from a data backend, right? Then you can go on and make it look nice or whatever you want to do from there. And add other information, but it's all about the fields and what you have in there. You can do that directly inside Excel. And that is coming here mid-February. All right, so let's move to Teams, because Teams always tends to get a lot of updates in the message center. So the first one is talking about Copilot agents. And if you're not familiar with the agent capability, this is being able to have a specific type of an agent that will run specific Copilot capabilities, right? And so one of the things that is coming out here is the ability to add an agent. And it can be just as easy as being able to do summarize or insights for this particular group chat. But now you can add them in group chats, right? So this is an option that you would do. You would go into the group chat. It's going to be in the upper right-hand corner. You choose the agent that you want to have, and you go from there, right? By default, this is going to be on. Obviously, you're not going to see it unless you have the Copilot license associated to that. But just understand that this is happening and you're able to actually add it to group chats. And I've done this with some of my group chats to really summarize maybe the last couple of days' conversations. If we have an intense conversation going on, I want to make sure that I capture that information, notes, and then we can act on that, right? Those types of things. But that is happening here early February to mid-February. Continuing on the team side of things, there's going to be a change here with transcription policy. And this is kind of aligning to what we currently have or what you currently see when it comes to recording. The idea of having it available automatically, right? Or I should say, having it available so somebody can choose it within the meeting as opposed to having it turned off, right? So just being able to be there and then say, hey, if I'm in my meeting, I can go ahead and do transcription. Same thing as what we're doing in recording. We already have that set up that way. This is just getting the level and the playing fields of both options are the same, right? So this is on by default. And keep that in mind from an administrative perspective. That is going to be happening behind the scenes. And this is going to be early February to mid-February when this is going to happen. This does not mean that it's going to automatically start transcription for your meetings. It just basically means that transcription is available and not disabled, right, for you to choose if I'm running that meeting. Chris, for Copilot agents and group chat to work, does the licensed M365 Copilot user have to be the hosting? Remember, this is group chat. There's no meetings associated to it, right? So the group chat could be part of that meeting. It's all based off of your license and what you have, right? So you can go in and look into that group chat, and then you can enable that for yourself, right? But nobody else is going to be able to utilize that inside that group chat wherever what's going on with it. So keep that in mind. All right, there is going to be a little bit of a change in how you can find activities inside your teams, right? So this is happening early February for targeted worldwide, mid-February to late February. There's going to be, you're going to see this at the top of your chat area, you're going to see an app mention. And basically, it's going to automatically then filter anywhere that you have an app mention in there. So it's basically a filter, right? Automatic filter for that. And especially in the new chat and channels experience, is going to filter for everything. Okay. So keep that in mind. And the rollout's going to be automatic. There's no administrative actions on that. Grant, that's a good question. It did not say anything about GCC and when the enable transcription policy by default. So I think that's going to probably take a little bit more time for that to come in. And I'm pretty sure that's going to be a part of an update when they do add that. Yes, I agree, Grant. I'm not seeing that in mine as well. Okay. An additional feature that is coming to Teams for meetings specifically is the ability temporarily for that meeting for attendees to be able to change their name, right? Their name in that meeting. And that's actually happening here worldwide, mid-March to early April, and that's going to be worldwide in GCC. GCCH and DoD is going to happen in April, so keep that in mind. But basically, if somebody wants to go ahead and make that change, right? So I could go into this meeting and I could temporarily make my name different, right? So if I didn't want Donald Donay, I could say D Donay, right? Or something else. What it's going to do is pop up there in the people section. You're actually going to see edit as part of that, right? So you're going to see the fact that they actually changed that name. So keep that in mind. It's not going to be anonymous. Everybody's going to see it, right, after the fact if they did change that name. Does this apply to Teams Mobile? That's a great question. I don't believe it actually called out if it's going to be Teams Desktop versus Teams Mobile, Donna. So I'll go back and look at the Message Center post and see if it does say anything else, but I'm going to probably put it out there. It's going to be desktop first, is my thought. All right, another thing in Teams, and especially in Teams meeting, for this meeting specifically, or any meetings for that matter, the ability to be able to pop out chat, Copilot, or notes panes, right? So if I wanted to, in this particular meeting right now, since I'm on the newer version of Teams, I can actually pop out my meeting chat as opposed to what I'm seeing in here. And if that's the case, then I can then position them on my screen. I can adjust as needed. I can expand them if I need to do that to be able to see chat and then my meeting a little bit separately. So that is coming out here worldwide, February to late February. And this is a big one for some of your users who are doing our meetings all the time, right? And be able to see what's going on. Maybe we could see note taking, right? They want to be able to take those notes and they want to be part of the meeting itself. They can pop that off if needed. All right. Some quick mentions. Actually, let me take a look. Chris asked a question first. We're curious to see if the editing name shows up in transcripts. Yeah, I actually think that will show up in transcripts, especially if if you're speaking and it knows who you are, then maybe that's the case. But I agree. I think it'll be interesting to see how that whole plays out, especially with e-discovery. All right. A couple things I want to point out. There's an update coming here for iPads. If you're familiar with the ability to be able to have multi-windows or split view in iPads, the ability in Teams to be able to have multiple instances of Teams so that you can have it showing different things on that split window is coming up. There's some confidentiality things happening with voice greetings that you probably really should take a look at. And that's already deployed. It's already out. Basically, it's going to say, if in the past it said, hey, you've reached a mailbox for Don Donay, and now it's going to say something like, for instance, hey, you reached this voicemail box. Please leave a message. It's going to obfuscate a person's name. They're going to say the person as opposed to saying the name, or they're just not going to say the name at all. So that's a change that's already happened. You're going to be able to also filter between active and archived Teams sites in Shifts app now. Not everybody's using the Shifts app, but this is one of the issues with Shifts app is as I'm doing a shift, and it goes past, it's considered archive. But then being able to shift through that and take a look through all that information and filter through all my current and my archive was hard to do. And this really helps for those organizations that utilize shifts a lot. Organizations who are utilizing calling plans for Microsoft Teams, you're getting an added bonus. Here in February, you're going to be able to have SMS for calling plans, which means that you're going to be able to send and receive SMS messages through Teams if, again, you have a Microsoft Teams calling plan as your ability to be able to do team or be able to do a call, right? So keep that in mind. That's happening here in February. Again, those who are interested in, or who actually have calling plans can do that. I do know they're looking at other solutions for direct routing and Operator Connect in the future, but for right now, this is where they're starting. There's a couple of things on the town halls and webinar side of things, and take a look at that if you have any of those. They're changing, they're actually separating out the recording policies and transcripts for each of the different entities. So for town halls, you're going to have the ability to say, any town halls, I want to be able to do this for my recording and transcript versus webinars. Today, they're together, right? So keep that in mind. There's going to be oh yeah, and then the last one I really want to point out is to be able to manage emails in PST files. And this is just for the new Outlook on Windows, right? So new Outlook has been slowly catching up to all the capabilities that are in classic Outlook, and we'll use those terminologies for now. This is one of those things that a lot of my customers have been complaining about, and finally being able to manage those PST files is going to be a big part of them moving to the new version of Teams. All right, now let me see. I'm not sure about that last question, Ruji. I will look into that. Brand impersonation protection. Yeah, I'll have to look at that a little bit, or if I have one of my colleagues that are security people that can take a look at that and respond to that as well. Admin actions, just so you guys see, we actually had one that was added. This is the MS Search. Old search reports will retire here in March. Otherwise, we talked about Teams Live Event a few times before. That there is no date on that. That's still going to continue until there's parity with Town Hall and Webinar, as well as a couple other things, including, I think we actually dropped off the Delve, which deprecated here in December. But keep in mind things like MFA enforcement is happening here in February. If you haven't done anything, I do need to get rid of it. Oh, that's 2025. We're good. The goals retirement, which was just announced not long ago, that's going to happen at the end of this calendar year. All right, I think, Michelle, that's all I got for today.